Well, welcome to this instructional video, and today we're talking about a tabletop baseball or basketball game that I've developed. I'm still trying to decide on a name, but just wanted to walk through some of the main components. It's gone through quite a few revisions over the last 7 to 10 days, so I wanted to put out a new intro video for the game because it looks quite a bit different and has several different sort of options and things that you can do in the game. These are the team cards here. We'll start with the cards, and then these are your individual players. We have the starting five for each team. This is a 2021-22 Knicks and the Suns. So from this past year, so we have the year here. We have their win-loss record, and then we go into what are their different play outcomes for each role. That's going to be the chart where you start. We also have um, some stats over here too. These stats are actually stats that you use to play in the game. The free throw percentage, 2-point and 3-point percentage. There's also a defensive rating for the team. And there's something called pace, and that's going to come into play when you do the setup of the game if you want to play that way. We also have scoring runs. So teams can go on a scoring run if for the Phoenix Suns, it's a 1 to a 3 triggers a scoring run. So about a 3% chance on every roll. And we also have some of these. These are just sort of stats to get a sense of like a quick overview of what the team did that year. So points per game, their offensive rating, and then their defensive rating for that season as well. So you can see here that New York is sort of an average team. Didn't score a lot of points. That was part of their problem. But Phoenix, obviously, one of the top teams in the league. Their net rating is 7.5. So I think they're the top team in the league with their net rating. You can see here for each individual, we have their name. We have their free throw, 2-point, and 3-point percentage. So just like here, we have the team. We have each individual as well listed, and each individual player has a defense rating as well. You can see that very solid defenders on this team. A minus is good, and the higher the minus, the better. They have a couple of plus defenders over here, but Mitchell Robinson, a very good defender this past year. We also have free throw, 2-point, and 3-point, a grid here. This is going to determine who took the shot. So this determines what is the play, and if it's a free throw attempt, then we need to roll against these numbers here and see who took the free throw attempt. If it's a 1 to a 21, then it's Chris Paul. 22 to 60 is Devin Booker, etc. Same thing with 2-point shots or 3-point shots. We have 2-point attempts, and we have 3-point attempts. We have 2-point shots and 3-point shots. We have an and one, which is a automatic 2 with an opportunity to shoot the free throws. So we need to determine on these plays who is the person who made or who's going to take the shot, right? So you got to determine who's going to take the shot. So that's how we do it in the game. And excuse me, if you do hit on a run, one of the things I noticed early in the game was once I started keeping individual player stats, I wanted to know what in the world happened during the run, because you would have sort of inaccurate stats coming out of that if there were 2 or 3 runs in the game, because you have these points being scored but no way to assign the points to anyone. So I made these scoring runs cards. You can see that they correspond to the scoring runs. And what you do is, let's say it's a 12-0 run for the Knicks, and then you would pull this card here, and then you can see that for we have each of the 5 players on the floor corresponding here. So this starts point guard to center, and then you'll roll one more time against these rows here. So 1 to 20, 21 to 40, etc. And then let's say it's an 18 is your roll. So you would look at this row here, And then you would go through and you would go to the Knicks and you would say, okay, the point guard had 2 free throws made. That's Kemba Walker. Evan Fournier had a bucket and 2 free throws. RJ Barrett had a 2. Randall had a 2, and Robinson had a bucket. So that's how you would do that. And then you could mark off your individual players with the score, still preserving the run, but also making sure that your individual stats are in line with your final score. And then if it's a run like this, where it's a 10-3 run, so the opponent scored 3, but the home team scored 10, or the team with the run scored 10, then you'll see that on those cards it has a red line as well for each of the rows. So there's a black line, and that's for the team with the run, and then there's a red line for the team that did not score the run. So you see a 1 through 20 here. So if we had an 18, again, you would do this. So the small forward had 2 buckets, shooting guard had a 2, power forward had a 2 and 2 free throws. Point guard and center did not score during the run, so you wouldn't mark anything there. And then for the opposing team, the shooting guard had a bucket, and the power forward hit 1 of 2 from the free throw line. Occasionally you see a 2 with a circle filled in circle next to it, and that's going to be an and-one. So there was a bucket with a foul, and they converted on the free throw. Occasionally you will see the 3 and 1, like on this 12-0 run here. You'll see a 3 and 1 on the point guard. So that's a 3-pointer with a foul, and then he made the free throw, so 4-point play. So if you want 4-point plays, you got to work in these scoring run cards, tabulations, I guess, for the players. We also have a scorecard set up specifically for this game. So we have our line totals up here. You can put the date if once we have real teams and a full season. You can have a date if you're doing a replay. We have our running score here with up to 160 points, so should be enough to keep you going. We have a little bit of space here for notes for each team. And then here you can put your starting 5, and then you'll just keep track of their points throughout the game, fourth quarter and overtime, and then you can write in their total points. You can use this as a position or their actual number. I don't have player numbers on the cards. If that's something you desperately need, let me know. Otherwise, you can just write in the position of the players over here. But generally, you start point guard all the way down to center, just like you do on these cards. That's how I typically do it. And then you have both teams on the same sheet, and you can use this to score the entire game. And again, this is these scoring runs cards are set up like sort of conventional scoring. So 3-pointer, 3-pointer, 2-pointer. This is a missed basket and a missed free throw and a made free throw. 2 makes and 1 miss, or 3 makes in a row and then 1 miss. So you have the little key down here. Circle filled in is a free throw made. A circle not filled in is a free throw missed. And then the other part of the game is timing. So we have a sheet here. Hopefully you can see that okay. We have 2 ways to keep time in the game. One is using just a straight clock, which is pretty straightforward. I mean, you would use some sort of marker. I use a coin, a small coin. So you keep it on the first quarter, start at 12 minutes, and then you begin working your way. Each possession, so each time you roll for a team, that's a possession. So you would roll, figure out what happened, move the clock, roll again, figure out what happened, move the clock. And you do that for each possession, whether it's a turnover or a scoring run or free throws or shots or whatever. You're always moving the clock. I've flirted with the concept of timeouts, where you could sit on the same time for 2 possessions, and that would sort of give one team who took the timeout an advantage, like a 2-for-1 sort of situation. And You can see that we're in 20-second increments here. Working with the clock, 20-second increments seem to be about the right pace, especially if teams are hitting on scoring runs. You'll see that it's about the right pace. It puts you typically between 90 and 120 points, which is going to be a pretty typical NBA game. You can also play with possessions. Now, the setup for possessions is this. You're going to use this pace number. So you can see that the pace for the Knicks is 104, the pace for the Suns is 100. And what pace is, it's a real value. If you go and look it up on NBA.com or Basketball Reference or whatever, you're going to see the pace value for each team. And what this is how many possessions per game did each team have, or did that particular team have. So on average, the Suns had 100 possessions per game. The Knicks had 104 possessions per game. So the way we do that is we combine those two. So that would be 204. And then we want, and together, to get both teams together, 204. And then you can either divide that by 4, or the way I like to do it is divide it by 2, just average it out. So 204 divided by 2 is 102. So 102 is our, we're trying to hit 102 possessions for each team. So we just kind of, it's a little bit less than the Knicks, it's a little bit more than the Suns, so you just kind of find a happy medium there between the two teams. A lot of times it'll be 100 and 101. You might get some sort of funky numbers. I'll just typically round down to whatever makes it easier for me to remember. One less possession in the game is not going to be usually a killer for each team. So then you'll use the possessions. You can see it's 1 through 55. So we have 55 possible possessions. In our scenario here with 102, we would then divide that 102 by 2, which gives us 51. And so for each quarter, we need to go 1 to 51. And the way that we sort of figure that out is, think of it this way. Each team needs to hit 102 possessions. We're using one possession chart for both teams for the entire quarter. So really, it's only half of these for each team. So if we have 51, then one team is getting 25 and one team's getting 26, right? And so if in basketball, you alternate possessions. So you have both teams alternating possessions through the first quarter. So one team is going to get 25 possessions, one's going to get 26. Theoretically, if you just continue alternating possessions all the way through the game, then that 25 and 26 will even out. So one quarter, it'll be one team 125, one quarter it'll be the other team 125. And so theoretically, it all evens out in the end. But essentially, because you need 100 for the Knicks, half of this period goes to the Knicks, which would be 25 or 26. And so that times 4 quarters is going to get you to your 102. So that's the idea. It's a little bit complicated, but just sort of trust the math. Do the average of the two teams' pace values, 100 and 104. The average is 102. So we have 204 divided by 2. That's 102. And then divide that by 2, which is 51. And that will give you your pace for each quarter. And just, even if you don't understand it at first, you'll understand it if you play through it. And then you'll be like, oh, okay, I understand. They actually got their 51 possessions per half. That's how it should work out. So one team should get 25 one quarter, one team should get 25 the next, one team should get 26 one quarter, one team should get 26 the next, and you should both come out with your 51 possessions. Because there's nothing that keeps the alternating. There's nothing that stops so that one team gets 2 possessions in a row, right? That's not the way basketball works. It just works one possession at a time. Even if you miss a shot, that's a possession, and it goes back to the other team. So there's no way to have possession and then keep possession, like do a possession and then keep another one. So a little complicated, but just sort of working the way that basketball works. This is an interesting one. This is actually how I started to time the game with possessions. I was trying to use a little bit more of the advanced stats and the things that are available to us that way. There's one last piece, and that is a digital timekeeper. It's an application that I built to roll the dice and to keep time all at the same time. So let me go get that, and I'll walk you through that part. All right. Excuse me. So there's also an online dice roller for the game that I made. This is an application that you can use on any device. I'm using a phone here, but you can use a tablet or your desktop computer or theoretically a Kindle. Any web-enabled device should be able to open the link if it has a web browser. And what this does is it takes your three main roles, which is going to be your first role here, which is your results role, so your the play result. Then you have, if you're playing by teams, then you'll have the shooting percentage, and you'll just go right to that in the second role. If you are instead playing off of the player cards, you would take your play outcome. You would use the second dice to figure out who took the shot, and then the third dice would be, what is the player shooting? Did he make it or miss it, essentially, right? The defensive modifier it doesn't need dice to play. But basically, every time you roll, it's going to take 20 seconds off the clock, which is, remember what we did with, you can either do that manually here with the clock, or you can do that here on the phone, and it will manually take that off. It'll switch to the next quarter, and I'll just show you some of the functionality here. So you do your first roll. So let's say it's the Knicks. First roll is a 34. 34 is going to be a 2-point attempt. So 29 to 52 is a 2-point attempt. I'm going to use the teams first. So if we were doing teams, we would go to the 2-point percentage, which is 49.7 last year. Then you look here, you compare the 32 to the 49. Is 32 less than or equal to 49? Yes. So that means that the 2-point attempt is good. You will mark 2 points for the Knicks. That's if you're playing just the team values. If you want to play individual players and then keep stats, you would take your 34. That's a 2-point attempt. Then you would move over to the 2-point column here, and you would measure, it was 32. You measure your 32 against the 2-pointers, which would be R.J. Barrett, so the small forward, from 21 to 51. He's the one taking the shot. So 32. And then right here is your shooting. You match this against the shooting percentage for the player. His 2-point percentage is 44.2. Our roll here is a 92. And so that would be a missed 2-point shot. It has to be within 1 to 44 for that to be a make for R.J. Barrett. So we would not mark any shots made. So if we were using the team percentage, you can see that was a make, but for the player, it was a miss. You can see that it's taken 20 seconds off the clock. Possession goes over to the Suns. You roll. And 18 is going to be a free throw attempt. So anything 15 to 27 is a free throw attempt. If we were using the team card, it's a 46. Their free throw percentage is 81.7 as a team. So you can round that up or down however you want to. If you have specific rounding rules that you like to do, just go for it. I usually just round everything down unless it's like 0.9, and then they're so close to being that there's no difference between being 89.9 and 90. So I usually round up when it gets to 89 or 0.9, which I don't see anything. Like here for Crowder, his free throw percentage is 78.9. I would just make that a 79. So if we were playing off the team card, then the free throw would be good. Then for well, let's go through the player card. So for 46, you would look at the free throw column, find 46. 22 to 60 is Devin Booker for the Suns. And then you look at this against his free throw percentage. His free throw percentage is 86.8. So an 86 is definitely larger than 14. So that would be good. Now, when you are taking free throws, it's 2 attempts. So the first one is good, let's say by Booker, well, or by the team, either one. If you were doing the team, you would hit this one again. If you were doing Booker, you'd hit this one again, or it doesn't really matter. But you can see here that we're at 11:20 because we're 2 possessions in now. So the first possession took us down to 11:40. Second possession took us to 11:20. And then if we hit this roll button, it's going to roll all 3 dice and take 20 seconds off the clock. But we only need another dice roll. So there's an issue with hitting the roll button. And the way I've solved that is you can touch any of these dice and roll it again. So you can see here, they can all be rolled separately. So if you need a separate dice roll without taking any time off the clock, you just simply touch one of the pairs of dice. So for this one, a 48 would be also less than 86. That would be the second free throw is good. So he made both free throws. You mark 2. You mark his individual space with 2 free throw makes, and then next possession goes over to the Knicks. And what happens if you hit a run? When you hit a run, like if it's a 1 to 2, let's say we rolled a 1 for the Knicks, and then after that we rolled a 69, right? So that's going to be a 6-0 run for the Knicks. And what happens is on a run, you need to take 4 minutes off the clock. So each of these happens where, when there's a run, the clock adjusts as well to sort of, it's kind of like a fast forward in time, a run is. So you've got these points that are scored, but you don't want it to only be 20 seconds off the possession, right? So I built in a minus 4 minutes into any run, and that's in the game guide. And if you're using the clock, you would simply, move the marker down 4 minutes. If you're using possessions, you would move the marker minus 12 possessions. So, or I guess it would be plus 12. So you would move it plus 12 possessions. And that would simulate the 4 minutes off the clock. And then you would go, and we have our 6-0 run. And then you would go here. You would go here, and then you would, I don't know how you want to do it. If you want to do the time first, or you want to do the scoring card first. It doesn't really matter because we are able to roll without moving the time. So you would go to your 6-0 scoring run card. You would get a new roll. A 97 would be here. And then you would take these results. So the power forward scored 4 points. The small forward had 2 free throws. So then you would mark that for your team that had the scoring run. And then when you want to adjust the time, you simply click on the clock, and you can see that it went from 11:20 to 7:20. So it took the 4 minutes off the clock. One of the tricky parts with the scoring run is what do you do when there's a minute or 2 minutes left in the half or the quarter, right? So this is a little bit up to you, but now we're inside, we're at 2 minutes and 20 seconds. And let's say one of the teams hits a run at 2 minutes and 20 seconds. So you do everything normally. You do the run here, you do the run on the scoring. And then when you click here, it's going to actually roll you over into the next quarter. And this is how I would suggest that you do it, is you simply take off the 2 minutes and 20 seconds, and then you roll off the next time into the next quarter. Now it does some kind of funky things here with with your scoring. You can cut the run in half and do it that way, or you can figure out possessions or however you want to do it. But when you hit here, you can see that now we're at 10 minutes and 20 seconds into the second period. So it automatically accounts for the rollover into the next period. It will do the same thing into from the second period into the half as well. So if you wanted to just, and I would just play it that way from quarter to quarter to quarter, half doesn't mean anything to me as far as the scoring is concerned. So if it was a 9-2 run, it would be a 9-2 run from the end of the second quarter into the first of the third quarter. So we're at 2 minutes. Well, that's the one we did, right? We're at 1 minute, and then there's a scoring run. When you click here, it automatically goes to 9 minutes into the third quarter. So we've sort of crossed over. We don't have a halftime show or anything like that, so it doesn't really matter about halftime, really, in the game. And so we've rolled over to 9 minutes in the third quarter. That would be the end of the run. And then you mark everything off like you normally would. So there's some sort of funky gotchas in that way, and I've tried to smooth that out as best I can. If you have any suggestions, the game is still in development. This is not in production yet, so if you have any suggestions about how to deal with that, and that's been a question that a lot of people have asked, just let me know. Just FYI, once you get down to the fourth quarter, and if you ever need to run time off the clock or get yourself back to a particular part of the game, you just click roll over and over and it'll take 20 seconds off. So let's say you get under 4 minutes in the game and you go to click this, it's not going to do anything. So it's actually set up so that it won't roll you past. So if you want to take the 4 minutes off, you can. You'll just have to do it by hand. Let's say at this point at 3 minutes and 20 seconds, the team goes on a 10-3 run to end the game. You would just mark down the time on the game and just say, the game's over, ended with a 10-3 run by whatever the team was. So, or you can say no runs inside of 4 minutes. If you hit a run, just roll over and roll again. That's definitely an option as well. And that will keep sort of that run at the end of the game because it seems like it happens sometimes, maybe 20% of the time that I played games. The winning team will hit a run at the end of a game and kind of blow them out. Although that does happen, right? So it's not unrealistic. It's just maybe not the way that you want to play it. The last part is defense, and I'll explain that. And I gotta head off here, but with defense, let's just start all over again. On our first roll, we have a roll. It's a 98. A 98 is going to be a three-pointer for the Knicks. And let's say that 82 is going to be Julius Randle. So he takes the three. And we're putting it a 26. Actually, we don't need to do that. That's a bad example. Let's do another one. That's not a good example. Turnovers abound. Okay, here's a 2-point attempt. Because on the three-pointer, he makes it regardless what the defense is. It's not an attempt, right? So on a 2-point attempt, that will be R.J. Barrett takes a shot. His 2-point percentage is 44. Now, we have a 74 here, so it's going to be a miss anyway. But the Suns' defense is a -5. You can either take the team defense or you can go to the player opposite him. You can see Mikal Bridges. I'm not sure how you say his name. I would say McCall, but it's probably Michael. His defense is a -2, so he's defending R.J. Barrett. And what you want to do is you're going to take that -2 and you want to subtract whatever shot, either a 2-pointer or a 3-pointer. You'll take 2 off of his percentage. So instead of 44, he's shooting at a 42 against Bridges. And instead of a 34% 3-point percentage, it's a 32% 3-point percentage. So when you go to compare this final shooting roll to the player, you'll gauge this number against 42%. So he already missed anyway. But if it was close, maybe it pushes him into a shot that's not made. Okay, so you simply adjust the number down. If he was being guarded by, we don't have any over here, but if he's being guarded by Kemba Walker, you would adjust his percentage up to 45%. So when Bridges is taking a shot and Barrett is guarding him, he is at a 63.8% and a 37.9%, which, doesn't seem like much until you hit a 37 or a 68 or a 62. So, if he hits a 63 on his shooting percentage roll and, normally that would be a miss, but because he's being defended by RJ Barrett, it would be a make. So it will happen that the defense has some effect on the game. You could also use overall defense against the shooters. Obviously, this is a team game, so you can either use their individual defense or the team defense, so that anytime any of these players is taking a shot, Booker would be 48%, and Paul would be at 53% because there's a -2 for the Knicks. Now, part of the issue is you can see that there are only a couple of guys. Their two big guys are good defenders. Their smaller guys are, average defenders. So you're applying a good defensive rating to even average defenders. So if you want to do that, you can. It makes it super easy to just figure everything out. Everything is -2. Or over here, everything would be -5. So that really tilts the game in favor of the good defensive teams or the better defensive teams. So if you want to do that, feel free to play it that way, or you can play individuals, either one. But that's how you make the adjustment for defense. If you're playing teams and team percentages, then you would simply take the -5, and then now their 2-point percentage would be a 44 instead of a 49, or it would be a 29 instead of a 34. So you would just subtract the defense from the overall team 2-point and 3-point percentage. So that's how defense works, and pretty simplified, but I think it's effective for moving the numbers. You'll probably see 2 or 3 instances a game where defense has a direct effect on a play outcome. If you're playing teams, you'll probably see it happen more often than that. And if it's a positive number, you would simply add. So if this was +5, now their shooting percentage would be 54% or 39%. So you just would adjust it up if it's a positive. All right, so this is the game. I got to take off, but yeah, I mean, I think it's a super fun game. It's got some depth to it. If you wanted to play, someone suggested like maybe you can do the first half with kind of a fast play version, and then the second half, when it's kind of down to the nitty gritty, then you could play like the individual players and things like that. So you can actually do that kind of style where you just use the team percentages all the way through, and the game's going to play a little more quickly because you have several rolls that you don't have to do. It's just roll here, and move on with life. And so that's going to play more quickly than if you went through and you had to figure out who the shooter is, and then you got to do the shooting percentage and all that. So if you wanted to do that for different parts of the game and just control tempo of the game as you want, or if you just want a quick play through games with teams that you don't care about, you can sort of quick play, and not a true quick play like one roll, one quarter, that kind of thing. But it is possession by possession still, even if you do the teams, but it does move a little bit more quickly than if you do the player by player and keeping individual stats. But if you're keeping individual stats, there's a way to do that. You just keep them all. And from what I can tell, it feels right. I also have some classic teams that you can demo that are part of the prototype. So here are all the teams that we have. We have the Kings and the Bulls. These are from the same 21-22. And then we have these teams from 1986-87. So we have the Lakers, Celtics, Mavericks, and Hawks. These are the top 4 teams in each division in 1986-87 season. And they have the exact same thing. So you have all the players. If you wanted to play with Magic and Worthy and Kareem, and you have all those players here. If you see a blank, that means the player is not counted in. So for 3-pointers, Worthy and AC Green either took none or they have 1 or something like that, something ridiculous. But even Kareem made a 3 back in 1986. So he's counted in. He's got a 1% chance of shooting the 3, and he's got a 33% chance of making 1. So that's a possibility. But you can see they have their own pace. You can see their numbers sort of historically up against some of these newer teams as well, which is kind of fun to see. You'll notice that there's a lot fewer threes when you compare them together. That's one of the first things you notice is their 3-point percentage starts, or 3-point attempts start at 75. Theirs start at 97 out of 100. So a lot more free throw or 3-point attempts and a lot more 3-point makes, honestly, than the Lakers. If you're playing the Celtics, they have a few more. Larry Bird was shooting threes, and so was Danny Ainge. So they were a little bit more proficient 3-point shooting team. They just didn't shoot as many, really, but they did. Oh, that's a typo right there. It should be 98 to 100. I had to fix that. There are some little typos and things in the game, so if you do find them, email me at onbasebaseball@gmail.com. So you can see those things here. You can see that this Sacramento only has a run number of 1, where the Celtics have a run number of 1 to 3. The better teams are going to have a better chance at scoring runs. So obviously, they actually score at a higher points per game. Their offensive rating is quite a bit better than even Sacramento. You can see Sacramento has all their players from this year. And the other thing you notice here is the 3-point, not just the percentages, which everybody's shooting at like 30% or better, but just the number of 3-point attempts that the power forward takes. So from 63 to 99 is a 3-point attempt, and for Mikhail doesn't have anything. He doesn't even take 3-pointers. So the game has changed quite a bit in those 30 years, where these guys are taking a lot of 3-point attempts, which here, DJ would, 11%, and mostly it was Ainge and Bird who were the 3-point shooters back then, which, Ainge is shooting 44% and Bird shooting 40%, which is pretty good, even up against today. The highest shooter here is at 41% with Halliburton. So, they were good shooters. They just weren't taking very many. So that's one of the things that you notice and that you see. So we have these 8 teams that you can play. You can play them against each other. I don't know how realistic that would be to play them against each other, although the Celtics, and if you look at the finals where the Celtics and Lakers are playing, um, Boston put 142 points on them or something like that in game 2. So it's not like they're not capable of scoring at the same rate. They're just going to be scoring a lot of 2s and not 3s. You can play with Dominique and Kevin Willis, and who can forget Tree Rollins. We have the Mavericks, who they actually did shoot a lot more 3s. Between Mark Aguirre and Rolando Blackman, and Sam Perkins too. There's like a young version of Sam Perkins, 1986, and he wound up shooting a lot more 3s. You remember his standstill left-handed 3-point shot, and he was sort of kind of a new wave of big men who could shoot 3s, and so Perkins is in there, but obviously James Donaldson, he of the glasses, not a great 3-point shooter, and not a lot of great 3-point shooting. Magic was not a really good 3-point shooter. Byron Scott was deadly from 3. That's reflected here. And so you can play with any of these classic teams. You can play with any of the teams from last season that we have in the prototype. And hopefully that gives you a good flavor, because some of these teams are, Phoenix is a good team. Sacramento is a bad team. The Knicks are in between, and the Bulls were a little bit better than average, but not as good as Phoenix. So you kind of get a flavor for the different teams and how they play. All right, if you have any questions about the game, one, go play it. You can download all these components free. I'll put the link in the description, and you can go to the GitHub repo and download all the components that you need. And then once you download them, play the game out. I have a game guide now that you can download as well. It's about 15 pages, and it explains everything, including the timer, the online application, explains how to do the clock management, how to do defense and the different roles. And if you still have questions, again, you can email me at onbasebaseball@gmail.com, or you can leave a comment or a question in the description of this video. You can also find me on the Delphi forums or on Facebook groups. The sports simulations and replays or something like that is the one where I've posted about basketball, but you can find me at many of those different places. I'm either posting as On Base or as Brian Haferkamp. So feel free to reach out to me there, wherever you can find me, wherever you're learning about the game. I'm keeping track of all those places in social media. And I would like to get this game into production before the NBA season starts. So this is going to be, October is usually the end of October is when the season starts. So putting some other things on hold to make sure that I push this out the door. And I'm not sure which season to start with. So if you have any suggestions, that would be great too. I want to have a season that people will play, and maybe that's this last one. I'm not sure, but fun game, and it's got a lot of components to it. But this greatly simplifies the process, so that this is all of the footprint if you are playing with the online dice roller. Okay, I think that's it for here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.